Hi, this is Mark News from Plant Talk Radio. Thanks for subscribing and listening to our podcast, Your Gardening Questions from Plant Talk Radio. To keep this podcast free, we're partnering with Stokes Seeds. Indoor seed starting is fun, easy, and economical. Now's the time to start your seeds. If you're looking to grow vegetable variety or add a punch of color to your flower garden, review the Stokes Seeds Starting Guide online. You'll find information about soil preparation, moisture, temperature, light, transplanting, and more. The Stokes Seeds website is a complete resource center you need to make your garden the envy of the neighborhood. Get growing with Stokes. Now, today's question.
Fred, I know this is kind of interesting because we get questions about toxicity a lot, especially when it comes to pets.
Yes.
And you had some warnings just recently, right?
I did. I had the great pleasure, so to speak, of listening to a talk at our garden show 3 weeks ago by a veterinary toxicologist. And I said, good heavens, you're the first one I ever met. She said, well, that's no surprise. There's only 100 or so of us in the world.
Oh.
Okay. Now then, she did not speak horror stories, but she did speak major warnings. And her topic was titled, No Lilies for the Kitties. I can't get into it. I've had, very limited amount of chemistry and so on. But the pollen from the lily, and this time of year, of course, being heavy on pollen, if a kitty walks on the counter where there is a lily, brushes its tail and or otherwise up under the lily, gets a bunch of pollen on it, and then fastidious cats are always washing themselves, it can be enough pollen to actually cause renal failure.
Wow.
Now, yeah, and unfortunately, you don't find out about it for a day or two or three after the material has been ingested. Then she also threw in another warning that is equally serious. No mushrooms for your dog. Now, that would be from toadstools in the lawn on through, if you're walking in the woods, leashed or otherwise, don't let your dog get into the mushrooms. And the best way I can explain that, in terms of there being so very many and knowing which ones can affect a dog, my old professor in plant pathology, I asked him one morning, because class morning, his hobby was mushrooms, identifying them, eating them, etc. And I said, well, how about this, and this? And I described it as thoroughly as I could. He said, Fred, if you can't find me, don't eat it. Don't take any chances, because unfortunately with the mushroom world, which I don't really understand why, but there are those that you can eat, fry up, and several things that I do love. But then those that are toxic to you, sometimes that is a irreversible process.
Yeah.
You're either going to be violently ill, or in some cases it takes you clear into the death march. But no lilies for the kitties, because the pollen and so on. And even, I don't know if you've ever paid attention, an Easter lily and or otherwise, they are so fragrant many times. You get your nose right down there to really get a good whiff. You touch your nose to that pollen, you're going to be yellow for a couple days. It has the ability to even lightly stain stainless steel. I mean to kid you not. I have disposed of lilies by throwing the scraps in a sink, going to go down into the can for compostables, and in the meantime, they lay there for a few minutes. I bump them, the water does it. The pollen that gets down on the stainless steel of your sink can stain the stainless steel for several days if you just leave it, or scouring powder is the next step. So whatever it is in that gets into the cat, into their gut, into their, let's just say the rest of their body, and it can kill. Certainly can make them very, very ill at ease, depending on how much they get into. But she just passed that along to me. As I say, she was not hyper about it, but very, very adamant about the fact no lilies for the kitties and no mushrooms for the dogs. And with there only being 100 of them in the world, I'm going to take her word for it.
Yeah.
With a doctorate level and 25 years of experience, I'm not going to argue with her. That's all there is to it.
And considering people are going to be buying Easter lilies like crazy recently, it's a good timing.
That's right.
For the warning.
Very good timing.
Because lilies are popular and kitties are popular.
Yes.
So.
Yes. And parts of the family. I don't know of I only know of a few pet owners or pet kinds of owners that wouldn't count the critter as part of their family. So you just don't want anything happen to any part of your family.
That's probably another good reason, if you have dogs, to make sure that you keep the toadstools out of the backyard.
Yes. And that isn't a big deal, Mark, in a way. Now, you first of all, you need to observe them, and they'll pop up almost overnight. But all you have to do is take a stiff bristle brush, broom, side of your foot, whatever, kick the tops off, and their development stops. The soil is underlain by the mycelia of fungus, which is mushroom, literally across the world. Even to the point of aerial pictures can show fairy rings that are a mile and more in total diameter that started with a little place in a green spot and on from there. So it's always with us. And like my old plant pathology professor said, if you can't find me, don't eat it. And don't let your dog get into any of them, period, because apparently quite a few are, again, going to cause serious illness or death, and it's just a matter of not taking any chances.
Thanks again for listening to the podcast. Remember, lose the winter blues and garden indoors. Start your indoor seeding with the help of Stokes Gardening Guide, plus their online articles. For the best selection of vegetable, flower, and herb seeds available, go to stokeseeds.com. Catalogs are still available. Cultivating successful growers for generations.